Dear church, let's talk about faith and perspective with Robert Odell. Hello and welcome to the Dear Church podcast. I'm your host, Chris McCurley. So excited to have my dear friend, Robert Odell, on the podcast today. He is not a Bible professor or a particular scholar necessarily, like some of the guests that we've had on in the past. He is a regular guy that is one of the best men that I have ever come in contact with. That's why he's been a dear friend of mine for many years. And I wanted him to come on the podcast and to share his perspective with something that he has been dealing with now for the last few months. Robert, thanks so much for being on the show.
Happy to be here, Chris. Thank you.
Yeah. So those of you who know me probably know Robert because for the last 14 years or so, he has gone with me when I speak somewhere. He's been affectionately called my bodyguard. He's gone with me to Red River Family Encampment for the last several years. And then just most of my speaking engagements, like a Wednesday night here and there, he would go with me. And when I first came to Oldham Lane about 14 years ago and moved to Abilene, Robert and his wife Paige were members at Oldham Lane. I think it'd be safe to say, Robert, that you were there but not completely invested. Would that be fair to say?
Very much so. Yes.
Yeah.
And so wasn't really doing a whole lot involvement anyway.
Yeah, and so we became friends. I started asking you to go with me on these speaking engagements. We began talking and, sharing stories. And just, during that time, I noticed a lot of growth in you. You became more active and more involved in what we were doing at Oldham Lane, became part of our security team at one point, and just kind of a behind the scenes guy, somebody that likes to work in the background and do a lot of things to keep everything running and all the gears turning. And so, fast forward to May of this year. So I've already moved to Dixon, Tennessee. You're still there in Abilene. My wife is still in Abilene because she hadn't made the move yet, but we're about to move as a family. And it's May, and I go back down to Abilene to pick up my wife to get our stuff and to move in the moving truck to Dixon. And you and I have breakfast, which we always do when I'm in town. And we go to the local coffee shop, and you share with me that you've been dealing with some headaches, that you don't usually get headaches, but for some reason you've been having these debilitating headaches. You've been going to the doctor. We talk about a little bit, which was unusual in and of itself because you don't usually go to the doctor and you don't usually share what you find out when you go to the doctor. And so you're confiding in me about these things that they're looking at your heart. They think it may be something related to your cardiovascular system. And so at that time, we leave the coffee shop. And I need your help because on the way down, my wife remembers that she didn't bring her keys with her and we can't get into our storage shed. And so you're going to cut the lock off of our storage shed. But on our way there, I noticed that you were, I don't know if I would say struggling. It was weird. You were driving and we would pull up to a stoplight and it would be green. And it's like you took a few seconds to process whether you could go or not. You were driving really, really slow, which you're not really a speed demon, but you don't usually drive 20 miles an hour. I just thought you may be talking, you weren't paying attention, that kind of thing. We get to the storage locker, you cut the lock off, everything's good. I take, you take me back to my truck and you go on to work. I go on to helping, get everything loaded up to move to Dixon. Your wife calls me about an hour later and says you had an episode at work. The ambulance came, you're at the emergency room, and she asked, did you notice anything odd about Robert this morning? And I was like, yeah, I mean, come to think of it, he was driving slow, all those kind of things. And so I go up to the emergency room and the doctor comes in after doing his CAT scan and says, Mr. Odell, you got a lot of things going on in your head, I think is how you put it. And from there, they do more tests and find that you have a 4-centimeter brain tumor that they need to remove. And from there, let's pick up the story from there and talk about what's transpired since then.
From there, we went to Dallas, UT Southwest to get this tumor removed. And on the 16th, the brain tumor was removed. We went up there, they did some more MRIs, and decided this is a cancerous brain tumor. And so to this day, I don't know the name of the cancer or anything. Don't need to know. God knows what it is, and he don't need the scientific name of it. So, it's what's been, I guess you'd say kind of mind-boggling to me is just because of the grace and mercy as far as, I had a couple of elders and a bunch of friends and family come up before I went into surgery. And one of the elders he looked like he's fixing to go in for to get a tooth work done or a tooth cleaning or something like that. He just, because the peace and comfort that we've been praying for was just overwhelming. I mean, I really have, to this day, have not been scared, have not been just depressed or anything like that. Just been very blessed to be where we're at. And we had the tumor removed. Very successful on all of that. And did a little radiation, a little chemo, still doing a little chemo, doing some maintenance on that. But the blessing, Chris, is, I don't know, being a Christian doesn't mean you're not going to have struggles or anything like that. But having all the friends and family and people I didn't even know praying for me and shoot me messages and stuff and shoot my family messages, it's overwhelming. I mean, it really is.
Yeah. I can remember after being in the hospital with you in the emergency room, they decided, that, they were going to do further MRI and try to figure out what it is, because when they do the CT scan, the doctor said, we don't really know what it is, if it's a mass, if it's a bleed or whatever. So they're going to schedule an MRI. And so at that point, I'd been up there for a little while and it was kind of crowded in the room. I remember the nurse saying, there only needs to be 2 of you in here at a time. And you said, well, I'll be glad to leave, But so I was the one that left and I went back. My wife was living in an apartment because I had already moved to Dixon. We were apart for 6 months. That's a story for another time. And so we were about to move out of her apartment, was why I was down there. And so I go back to her apartment, and then I get the phone call from Paige, your wife, saying that it is a tumor. They don't know really exactly if it's cancerous or not, but it is rather large. And I remember hanging up the phone and breaking down. And I'm not a crier. I don't typically cry. I certainly don't cry at the drop of a hat. But I remember being thinking at that point, wow, this is kind of the worst possible news that we could have received. However, I think I was comforted by the fact that you said you really haven't been scared or anything. You've never been that kind of person, though. You have never been the kind of person that worries about anything or, gets really, upset about anything. So that's kind of in your nature. Your personality as such. And so I remember kind of being comforted by the fact, well, here I am breaking down and Robert's probably like, well, let's just go get this taken care of. And that's really what you did. You were like, let's go get it out and we'll deal with it from there. The fact that you said, I don't know what kind of cancer it is, don't care to know. You have said that from the beginning. I don't want to know timelines. How long do I have to live? All that kind of stuff. I don't want to know all that. And you told your family, don't be looking on the internet. Don't be, telling me what you found and all that kind of stuff. I just want to live my life. And I respect that so greatly because I think I would be tied up in knots. But talk a little bit about the surgeon went in, he got the tumor. It was wrapped around some things that involved your sensory neural function. So he left, what'd you say? He got about 95 to 98% of it. Is that right?
95 to 98% is what he felt like he got out of there. He didn't want to go any further because it took a chance of, some paralysis or some vision and some stuff. His deep right lobe. And so, I don't know all the names to it, but he got as much as he thought he could get without causing damage to me. And so, just, man, from there, like I said, we just started doing the radiation and chemo treatment. And then the next MRI shows nothing. I mean, we go in and it's a clear MRI. There's nothing in there that they're they can't point at anything and say, hey, looks like the surgeon did an excellent job, and the chemo and everything did his treatment. And my whole time I'm thinking, thank you, Lord, because I know they did the work. So, he provided those very smart and doctors and talented doctors. But like I said, it's God's hands in there getting this stuff taken care of. So,
so you did treatment, you did radiation. The radiation happened at like 8:00 at night at the hospital. You'd go home, you'd take a chemo pill and go to sleep. And so you really have not had any sort of sickness or anything like that. The chemo comes in the mail, you take a pill, you go to sleep, you wake up the next day and you're good to go. And from what I understand, today is the first morning after your first new chemo treatment. So you started a new one last night. And so now you're starting, this new treatment, and you're with us this morning. And we were texting back and forth about this. And I said, hey, don't overdo it if you need to back out or whatever. But you look like you're feeling great, doing great. I mean, what is the prognosis going forward?
Well, I mean, this is a 5 days on, 23 days off maintenance, more or less treatment's what they call it. They have 12 cycles, so that adds up to a year. So we'll be doing this for a year. And then there has been no discussion past that. I'll do MRIs every 2 months, possibly the rest of my life, I guess, So, because they want to make sure if anything comes back that we're on it as soon as it shows up. So, that's where we're at right now. It's has a good chance of showing back up, but it might not.
Yeah.
So we're going to stay on top of it, do what they want to on that, and run with it.
So that's the medical side of it. That's the diagnosis part. That's the history and the background of our relationship and how, that was a very condensed version of everything and the events that took place. Let's talk about the faith side of things, because like we said at the beginning, you were coming to church, you were a part of Oldham Lane. You weren't, probably all in, but you were there, and you definitely, are the kind of guy that, you're going to be there. You believe in God. You want to serve God. And, but you were at a point where you're still kind of young in your faith. And so you're growing and you're maturing. And I've seen that, and I've been a part of that. And that's been awesome to see. But talk about the leaps that you have taken since all of this and how this has affected your faith and your relationship with God.
Boy, yes, talking about crying at the drop of a hat. Well, sometimes so, it's Chris, just, I felt like I was a Christian. Felt like I was, pretty good old boy, do what I need to do, and, help others, blah, 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 blah. But when all this started up and all the prayers and, the calming effect that God put over me over all of this is just more of a, I've got this, again, it doesn't mean I won't have any trials, but we've won this battle right now. We're going to keep going on. It's brought me so much closer to God. I mean, I could remember, just, praying at the hospital and stuff like that, and with my wife, and Paige been with me the whole time. And so it's, brought us closer. Me and Paige realizing, that you have that soul partner that's with you for the lifetime, and so that's just you always still like it, but that when you get to that point. So it's, just, again, Chris, my prayer life, sliding out of that bed, hitting your knees and praying in the mornings to, for all of the blessings that you have, and thanking the Lord for where you're at, thanking you for all He's done, and for your family and friends and the people that you're around at that time in your life. Because, I've been a Christian a long time, but I've been away from, halfway into this for a long time also, if halfway. So, like I said, it's you know, just because you're a Christian don't mean you're not going to fall away and come back. But the good part is the good Lord give me a chance to come back and get back in and just keep up the fight. And so that's what I promised to do and keep moving through this life, helping try to bring preaching, try to bring other people to Christ.
Yeah.
So it's
I've heard it said when somebody is facing, various trials, something like you're going through, that it really centers you and focuses you to where a lot of the things that you thought mattered really don't matter anymore. And a lot of the things that you prioritize suddenly move way down the list. Would you say that's true? And how so?
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's kind of like I've heard you and several people talking about, don't let your work be your life. And their job is the only thing they have going. They go to that, they do that, they did that. Chris, God has worked. Standing back looking at this now, me and Paige had a little piece of land in a 3-bedroom house, and a bunch of stuff going on. And I was trying to farm and run a couple of cows and stuff. Anyway, recently in the last 2 years, we've sold all that down. We've gotten out to a small 2-bedroom barn door that we built for me and her. Everything was working on getting smaller so that we could get ready to retire. And we have to think God's hands was in on all that he knew this stuff was coming and helping us. See, you don't think about work as much. You don't think about, all those trivial things that you thought meant a lot to you. They just don't. I mean, now you focus on God, you focus on your family and what you can do to help anybody that you see might be struggling. If I can say one thing to bring somebody closer to Christ, then I want to know what that is.
Yeah.
I know there's lots of people out there that, may be Christians, but may not be close to God. I was one, I feel like I'm a lot closer now. And it's just, and I don't want this to happen to anybody, but I want everybody to be able to feel the comfort and the love and the peace as far as when you get that close to God.
It's interesting, Robert, that I've noticed it as a minister that when something like this happens, when someone faces adversity, whether it be in their own personal health or with the loss of a family member or whatever it is, that there's one of two directions you can go, right? For some, they pull away completely. They don't want anything to do with God or church because they're angry. And believe it or not, I can understand that to some degree. You kind of see that and understand it, even though you don't condone it. But then the other side of that coin is you draw closer to God, that you use that opportunity to be as close to God as possible, because now all of a sudden you're more grounded, you're more focused on what truly matters. Talk a little bit about when you found this out. Now, it's funny to a certain degree because I was in the room when the doctor said this, and you had told the doctors that were working on you before this, when they were saying it was cardiovascular and all that, you had said, I don't think it's my heart. I think there's something going on in my head. I just feel that there's something going on in my brain. And when the doctor gave the diagnosis in the room, albeit it was pretty rudimentary, he said, there's a lot going on in your head. You go, I told you. I tried to tell you. That was your response. And that was the kind of funny part. But once you hear the MRI's results and you know that, okay, we're dealing with a brain tumor here, which, let's face it, that's always, bad news. When you hear that, talk about what you felt in that moment and the response that you had in that moment to cling to God.
Sure. Well, it's, it was just kind of of course, it's a punch in the gut, or in the head. But you're just trying to wrap your mind around it. But I knew that the healing path was with God. And so it just made me, right then, you're just praying, Lord, please help me. Please guide me. Please help the doctors. I mean, what do I need to do? Because, it's not that, we're supposed to be looking for heaven, but in our minds, we want to be here with our family and our grandkids and stuff like that. So it's,
Sure.
Once you hit that, I don't know how to explain that, but once you get to that point to where, anybody could die car wreck today. So, I mean, it's kind of weird that something like this makes you think, oh, hey, I do have a number. And, that number could be, tomorrow or today. I mean, I think we run through life not thinking about that number, and because we don't know when it is. When the Lord's going to call us. When the Lord's going to call us, are you ready for that day when your number's called?
Yeah, we're all born with an expiration date, right? And you don't know when it's going to come due.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. You just don't know. And so when they said this to me, I'm like, oh, hey, an expiration date, is that here? Am I ready for that to be here? So that scared me as far as that part, and drawing me closer to God to try to make sure I'm ready for that. And I feel like I am. So.
Yeah, you said something a while ago. You said, I wouldn't pray for anybody to deal with this, but at the same time, you feel like that it's brought you closer to God. I have often said, but I don't know that I have the teeth to put with this because I have not dealt with extreme adversity. I've dealt with my share of issues like anybody else has, but I've often said when it comes to suffering, it is an opportunity. It's an opportunity to draw closer to God, and so don't waste that opportunity. Do you think that in your mind you can say that this in some ways has been a blessing to you?
Yes, I'll go there. As far as, I've heard people say, God's blessing with cancer and all that. And it's not the disease, it's the blessings that he's working around with that. Yes, it is. As far as it's brought me closer, I'd say it's brought me closer to my wife, which I didn't know I could be. It's brought me closer to God. It's because you're just, that's your answer. As a Christian, that is where the answer is. And so you draw near to God. I can't, again, you said earlier that, there's people that either push away or draw near. I can't say, nobody knows why I got this tumor. Nobody knows why somebody dies in a car wreck that day. So my lucky draw on this was that I had a chance to make all this right and to get right with God and my family and my friends or whatever, just to make sure that I'm right, where I need to be. Everybody's not going to get yes.
Yeah, that's really profound. What you just said there is that, the opportunity to deal with this and not be taken from this life immediately, but having this opportunity to draw close to God and to realize that, okay, I need to get some things lined out in my life. And by the way, we want to let our viewers and listeners know you weren't a terrible guy. That's not what we're trying. That's not the picture we're trying to paint. I think, where you were at, 14, 15 years ago is where a lot of us have been or are at right now, which is I believe in God. I love God. I go to church. I read my Bible and all that. It's just, it's not the most important thing in my life, perhaps, or it's not something that I am feeding daily or minute by minute. It's just, maybe not, full on discipleship, but, I'm there. I believe I want to serve. It's just, this puts it into a whole different perspective and really in a whole different category when you're dealing with something like this. So I did want to make that clear that you weren't an absolute pagan or heathen, but you went with me to Red River Family Encampment this year, and if you've never been to that, anybody watching or listening, it's an awesome experience in Red River, New Mexico, in the mountains under a tent, and you have all these speakers and singing, and it's great. And you were with me this year, and you've been with me the last 4 or 5 years. I could tell that it was a little different experience for you this time around. Talk about how different worship is now versus maybe before all this happened.
I probably won't be able to word this. It's just more meaningful I mean, it's emotional. Um, you just, like I said, I've drawn so much closer that, you know, everybody's prayer matters to me.
Yeah.
Everybody's, how you doing? Everybody's, that comes up, talks to you matters. Instead of, not that it didn't matter, but you just go, hey, how you doing? It kind of moved along now. It just seems like all of that matters more. And I don't know why that is. It's just a reality check, I guess. Who am I to explain it? But the you're just taking everything in so much more. To me, it means so much more to you, I guess, because you got reminded that you have an expiration date. But you just want to make the best of everything that you have, and the best for the people around you also.
Absolutely. You've talked several times about how this has helped your marriage and how you've drawn closer to your wife, Paige, who has been, nothing short of amazing in all of this. Talk a little bit about that, about your relationships, especially with your wife, and how that has improved.
Well, it's again, me and Paige have had a great marriage, great relationship with each other, but it's just I'd say she was the rock that got me back into church, and she would tell you I was the Christian rock that held the family and all that. But I mean, it's we've been very blessed with that part of it, to be on the same page with each other, and to it's just that love that you have, Chris, as far as knowing this is my wife, this is my loved one, and I know she loves me, but it's, she's going through this too. That was my biggest thing. I have a lot of friends and family around, blessed for that, but it was, my biggest thing was, what have I left undone that burden her? I don't want to burden, I can't burden my wife. What have I got left undone out there? That's, all that I'm going to get to one day. And that bothered me more than anything was, what was I going to burden her with? And again, friends and family would have to take care of that. That was what was on my mind. And we would just sitting and watching TV, sitting reading scripture, praying with each other every night. We make a point to set up and pray with each other when we go to bed. And, we probably did that, but we probably rolled over both different directions and prayed and went to sleep, But now we're making it a point to sit up and pray before we go to sleep with each other. And so it's just another one of the blessings that you don't realize. It's a real simple fix. Just get together and say a prayer, whatever you want to watch TV, okay, but at least you went together and pray,
Yeah. It sounds like the theme of today's episode, what I hear you saying over and over again, is that this whole ordeal has caused you to really stop and smell the roses, to invest in every little moment and minute detail of life, things that we typically just run past because we're trying to get through the day and get a job done or fulfill a task. You're saying what this has done is allowed you to pump the brakes and to stop and to pay attention to all those little moments that maybe we take for granted. Would that be safe to say?
Yeah, it would. Chris, it's just, again, you just take off running through life and you're running with your hair on fire. Just what's the next thing we're going to go do? What we're going to do tomorrow? What we're going to do next day? You're laying all that out. So to pump the brakes, stop, realize that there's a lot more to this world than just how fast you can run through it. We're all going to go through it. But I mean, it's a slowing down, smelling the roses, like you're saying, just realizing that. I mean, me and Paige was talking this morning about, we both, have our sight on heaven now and know that, we've had a great life, and our kids and our grandkids. And again, you want to sit and watch them be raised and, help raise grandkids or whatever. Send them home if you want to, but I mean, help raise them and aggravate grandkids and stuff. But hopefully our legacy will help that go through also. But I mean, we don't have to be here for that. Now our sights are set on heaven. And so like I said, we talked about that this morning, kind of zero things in for us that we really wasn't even thinking about.
Yeah, you go from being earthly focused, which I know I am way too much, and I think a lot of us are. You go from being so earthly focused, and now it's like, okay, I have my focus here, but mainly my focus is now on heaven, which can't be a bad thing, right?
No, that's right. That's right.
I want our viewers and listeners to know just how outside the box this is for you, because you are not one to really express yourself or show emotion. You are not one to stand up in front of the congregation and lead a prayer, certainly not lead singing or things like that. You have always been one of those secret servants that wants to be behind the scenes. Just tell me what to do and I'll get it done. You're one of those guys who can build anything, work on anything, but don't ask me to lead a Bible study or something like that. That's just not who I am. You don't feel comfortable doing that. So I hope people understand just how significant it is that you would come on the podcast and do this, because this is huge for you, right?
It is. Yes. I told Paige I couldn't hardly sleep last night because of the anxiety for this and starting my new keyboard treatment. But there's also this in my head, this goofy redneck getting on this show where Chris is, sorry if you're ready to go down, Chris. But it's, I'm a behind the scenes guy all the way. I do not stand up in front of the congregation and lead a prayer and want hardly do it in front of the group. It took me forever to even do that in front of family. At the dinner table or whatever. I mean, it took me forever to get to where I was comfortable doing that. And I am. But I mean, several years of me and Paige being married before that came out to where I could do it.
Yeah, part of your growth in all this, even before the brain tumor, you were starting to lead devotionals at home with your kids and starting to do more things like that. And I've seen that. It's just been amazing to see how you've kind of grown with that, and you've been sharing and opening up more in groups, and that's been awesome. And that's been even more so since this recent health episode. And one of the main reasons I wanted you to come on and share your story is because there's no doubt people that are tuning in that are dealing with something similar, maybe in their own personal life or with somebody in their life. If you could give one piece of advice or maybe words of wisdom from somebody who has gone through this, or maybe even still going through this to some degree, what would you say to them?
I just would just keep your faith, keep praying to God, keep relying on Him, keep praying for grace and mercy, and have your friends and loved ones around you in that same mindset, praying for you and complete healing. And it's just God didn't punish you with this. God can help you through this. Yeah. Again, being a Christian is not said we will never have trials or we'll never have any struggles or anything like that. But I don't know how people will go through something like this and don't have God. Yeah.
That's a really good point. I feel the same way, and what travails that I've had, which don't compare. But anything that you're dealing with or somebody's going through, it's big to you, right? Because trials are trials, and just because it may not be as significant as what somebody else is dealing with, it's still tough. And I want our viewers and listeners to know that I still think that the best option is to get through it with God. And if we can help you with that, if you have a need, or if you'd like to share your story and you'd like prayers, then certainly let us know. You can email me at chris.mccurley@rippleoflight.com. I would also say that if you have a question specifically for Robert, maybe you'd like more advice, or maybe you'd like to, pick his brain about all of this, and you're dealing with it and you want help, then email me. Again, chris.mccurley@rippleoflight.com. We'll make sure that we pass it on to Robert, and I know that he'd be much willing to help you in any way that he can. Robert, thank you so much for coming on, buddy.
Oh, I appreciate you, Chris. I got a warning shot.
Okay.
You may not all get that, So go ahead and get it out with God,
Yeah.
because I got a
Great
warning.
point.
I got a warning. This is coming.
Yeah.
There's a whole lot of people that don't get that warning. So I
Yeah.
mean, you may not have that chance to get right. So
Yeah.
don't think you can just keep running through your life.
I love that. You got a warning shot, not everybody does. You may not get an opportunity to get right, so do it now. Yeah, I love that. Well, thank you all for tuning in today. I appreciate all the feedback that we've been getting on the podcast. Keep it coming. Keep sharing the news about the podcast and all the platforms where you can find us and turn people on to it. Robert, thanks again, buddy. I love you, and I'll see you soon. Okay.
Love you, brother. Y'all be safe.
Yeah. Yes. Until next time. Until next time, may the Lord bless you and keep you. Sincerely, Chris.